And the success coach would not be a social worker, would not be a caseworker, would not be somebody who's, basically there to fix a worker, but somebody who is there to problem solve, right? And say, okay, you can't get to work. I've got resources X, Y, and Z to help you, and to really just problem solve. So thinking of it as sort of somebody who's in their corner. It's not someone that the workers can go and complain about their boss. It's really somebody who's just all about practical problem solving to keep people in their jobs, right? To retain them. And there's a really neat group called that they have a model called the Employer Resource Network. These are called ERNs, Employer Resource Network. And their model is that a set of employers in a community might actually sort of band together, and together they would pay for the success coach or a set of success coaches if they're very big companies, so that the person has sort of a little bit of independence from the company. And they might co-fund some of the resources, right? Maybe it's an emergency cash grant program where if somebody's behind on their rent, they could come and get some help, and you would set very clear parameters around that. But they can share the costs, and then that model often comes, that model does come with a sort of a collaborative approach too, where the employers, I think, sometimes get together quarterly, maybe more, maybe less, but they get together as a group and say, what are you struggling with? And they can all say, really can't, this is an example of an employer resource network in Pontiac, Michigan. They say, we can't fill our graveyard shifts. So they would do that work that I mentioned, before in my own work of actually going out and asking, talking to workers, what would make the graveyard, what would make the late night shift attractive to you? In that case, they found out there was no childcare at all during those hours. And so the employers banded together to actually seed one of the nearby childcare centers to start childcare provision during the hours of those shifts. And they found that to be really successful. And after it was seeded, that program ended up being self-sufficient. But it wouldn't have happened without the employers sort of coming together, realizing it was a problem that they all were experiencing, and trying to address it. And another example was the fact that there's no public transportation at all during a key shift. There's just no way to get to a set of employers. This is in a different community. And so this employer resource network got together and basically piloted, they worked with the local transportation authority to pilot a bus route. And then when it turned out it was successful, then the transportation authority could take it over. And so it ultimately ended up being a benefit to the employers. So on a fundamental level, right, at the very basic level, I think doing more to really listen to your workers and try to figure out what their needs are. We think about all the great ideas we have for why workers can't get to work, why they sort of leave jobs, why we not be able to attract certain workers, but really trying to do the work of getting beyond your own biases and doing some listening. I've heard of CEOs. One practice I really like is like spending a day doing every entry-level job in the company. So you can actually see what it's like and you can feel the pressure points yourself. And then some of these ideas of like flexible resources that meet families in sort of that crisis moment so that they can stay attached, whether it's a success coach, someone to call, or a set of modest but very flexible resources that families can use, because the crisis is a thing that is often shared, right? Most workers will have something that happens that makes it hard for them to get to work, or there's like this critical juncture of whether or not they can stay or not. And they usually sort of look similar, but they're just not the same. And I think a mistake that a lot of employers make is to over specify, you can get help for this one sort of specific situation. And so it means a lot of families who are experiencing a crisis, they don't quite fall within those guidelines. So it's not any help to them.
What's the next book going to be?
We're doing a book on America's poorest places. So if you think of $2 a day, it's being about like following very poor families who really want to work, who have a history of work, but have a hard time because of instability in the jobs and in the family, sort of maintaining that work. We've really been thinking a lot more about how places play a big role in this. And you can see these amazing disparities across American communities where things like life expectancy, depending on where you're born, it can range wildly, like more than a decade different in fairly small geographic areas. And then rates of social mobility. So some colleagues of ours, Raj Chetty and Nathaniel Hindren, have led up some work to really use tax data to find out, like, in every place, every county in America, if you grow up low income, what are your chances of reaching the middle class? And you see huge differences depending on what community you're in, where some places, the American dream is alive as well. In some places, if you grow up low income, you're just as likely to reach the middle class as anybody else. But in a lot of places, if you grow up poor, you're likely to be low income as an adult. So we have been doing some quantitative work to really try to hone in on some of the places that don't just have the highest poverty rates, but the worst health outcomes and lowest rates of mobility, and then really try to live into this tough, notion I'm trying to sell of listening. So we've had students who've gone to live in the communities we're in. So we're in the Mississippi Delta. Actually, I'm getting ready to my first post-COVID trip down to South Texas in a few weeks. We've been in Appalachia and really just try to understand what's going on in these places at the community level and what we can do to help support those communities so that families' outcomes improve.
Well, it'll have to be the next purchase. What is that, a 2022, 2023?
Well, we'll see. Yeah, where it's everything slowed down with COVID, but I hope we're going to finish it this year. We're probably about 2 years out.
Can't rush the process. Right.
I'd like it to be going a lot faster, but lots of different things have been going on. So
sure. Well, I think it's really important work, and like I said, the book has made an impact on how I've thought about the things that impact a worker, a person, a family every day. And, sitting on the other side of conversations with leaders that talk about, we want to fix employee engagement challenges. And it all connected for me. If it doesn't just happen when you're clocked in, there's so much more that goes into it.
Yep.
I want to ask you in closing about, given the theme of future of work, for Luke, what's your hope for the future of work?
So I guess I'm less worried that the robots are coming to take our jobs, as I do think we're going to lose some jobs to automation. Clearly, we already have. Although I recently went into a fast food place and had to put in my own order, and boy, was that a terrible experience. So, but I do think more and more of the jobs, even the lowest, sort of the entry-level jobs, they're just going to take more and more skills with digital resources, digital literacy, I think more often call it, and problem-solving skills, right? It can't be about learning this new system or this new program. And it has to be really about like training people to know how to deal with systems. And so I think really that points to moving in the direction of companies really investing in workers, investing in some serious training, and trying to say, even to folks at the entry level, go back, I'd like to reverse this course of like trying to actually, I feel like for a long time we've been moving in the direction of trying to reduce the sort of connection and the ties between worker and firm. And I just don't think that's going to work in the new world, that we're going to have more investment, more training that the companies do, more on sort of the skills of digital literacy and problem solving skills, and less on a particular program or a particular thing. And then as a society and as employers, I think we need to stabilize families. So I'm really excited about the child tax credit and stabilizing families to have this sort of source of support that they can count on, rather than huge swings in their safety net programs, as well as huge swings at the workforce. So thinking about how we stabilize that, I'd like to do more on like stabilizing health insurance, right? So we sort of take one sort of source of instability out of the equation with a more stable safety net. And then I think this like revisioning of saying like who gets to do what work, this is actually a very libertarian idea of that I think is an important one. So the huge pileup of like occupational licensure and licensing and like exams, and you have to do this training and it costs this, and then you take the exam and it costs that, and then you can do this work. And I think often we don't even know if those types of trainings really, those types of licenses really improve the quality, but they certainly reduce the number of people who can do the work. So I think really opening it up at a company level and say, maybe we figure out different ways to take a chance on people than sort of expect them to have had the money to do these things, and maybe sort of reduce some of that red tape. I think that's a really interesting direction. So that's my vision in a nutshell.
I think it's great. I think there's a ton there, and I appreciate you taking some time and talking with us.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I'm looking at the book right now, and one of the pages that I have marked has this line. It says, "How is it that a solid work ethic is not an adequate defense against extreme poverty?" The concept that you can pull yourself up by your bootstraps and just work hard to work yourself out of poverty may not be true. And amongst many other notes that I took away from this discussion with Luke, and I'm sure you as well, 1 in 4 jobs pay too little to lift a family of 4 out of poverty. Also his point around we have to figure out ways to do policies that can really help people stay attached to jobs when a crisis happens in their lives. Also, the startling fact that as we're in a moment, as we think about hiring challenges, and we think about companies that are trying to, or say they're trying to find the best candidates to join their team, we should be aware of the fact that criminal records stand in the way of opportunity for many Americans. The average black applicant with no criminal record had to apply for 7 jobs to get a call back, while a black job seeker with a felony had to put in 20 applications. Another data point from Luke's work. I think the thing I walk away from a discussion like this realizing is that as a member of the community, as a member of a team, as a parent, as a business leader, I have the opportunity and responsibility to dismantle discrimination, dismantle systems around us that hold some people back, because the reality is any type of discrimination against any person is discrimination against every person. So thanks to Luke Shaefer on his work. Thanks to Luke for joining me and making time for this discussion. Now, don't forget to subscribe to Bring It In so you never miss an episode. We've got some awesome guests lined up that you're not going to want to miss. Now, back to work.